Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Inner Circle podcast, where real estate meets real life, hosted by Jillian Owens. That is me, AKA your homegirl, Jillian. I am thrilled to have you here on our first episode on IntellectualRadio.com. This is a long time in the making. I have been thinking about a podcast for years, and I finally got up the courage to do it. This podcast is about real estate is the central theme and the central focus, but it's real estate and how real estate connects to real life, real experiences, real stories, and just everyday life. So we'll the format of the show, we will have guests every week coming to share different experiences about their real estate journey, from credit, from financing, lending, to investing, to flipping, to buy and holding. There will be several different topics that we'll cover. We'll have married couples, we'll have single individuals, we'll have businesses, how to start an LLC and get into real estate. We'll have tons of topics every week, and we will have guests every week that'll come and talk to me and talk to you, the audience, about their real estate journey. So I want to just start with a little bit about me and how I got into real estate. So actually, I have an education background. I started off as an academic advisor, working for a university, advising students to navigate college. I quickly rose through the ranks, and I became a dean for a university for several years. After seeing changes happening within that organization, I decided, hey, let me get a plan B. So that was, let me try to figure out what else can I do to make another stream of income, because I just didn't know what was going to happen. So I decided, let me get my real estate license. Had never thought about real estate before. I did own a home. So I went through that process. My cousin was my realtor. Her job looked easy. So I said, hey, let me get my real estate license. So went through the process, went through the coursework, took the exam, took the state exam. I passed. And so I got my real estate license, and what I thought was quickly going to be a secondary job or a part-time job really quickly became a second full-time job. Once I told my network or community, or what in the real estate world we like to refer to as our sphere of influence, that I was a realtor, that's all I had to do. My phone was ringing, my text messages, and I quickly had a second full-time job. And I have not looked back since then. So I have worked with family members, I've worked with friends, I've worked with colleagues. You get tons of referrals. That's how in the real estate we you do a lot of our business is by referrals. But once people found out that I became a realtor, and based on my experience or the referrals or recommendations, I quickly built my own network of clientele. So after being in real estate for a few years, I decided to try my hand at investing. I, like everybody else, am an HGTV fan, so I've watched every flipping type of show that's on the program. So I quickly, decided, hey, let me give this a try. So a friend of mine, my very first flip, a friend of mine, we bought a property in Dalton, Illinois. We flipped that property. We had challenges, but we flipped that property in about 9 months. And after that, I kind of got hooked with flipping. So I purchased another property by myself and flipped that a year later. So I've had a couple flips under my belt. I've also helped clients identify potential flips and help them navigate the process of renovating a property and getting it ready for resale. So that's one of my expertise as well. So we'll talk a lot about investing on the show as well, because I know that's a hot topic for a lot of people. So we want to give the audience, tips and strategies about going to buy flip property or buy property that they can get streams of income from, which would be a rental, or even land. We'll have someone on the show that'll talk about land as well, and how to go about doing that, how to zoning, new construction, things like that. We will talk about. So I want to kind of talk about, what as an entrepreneur within real estate. I get this question a lot. How is it running your own business? And I tell people all the time, the main key points that I tell people with being an entrepreneur is consistency is key, right? So you have to be consistent within your business, whatever it is that you're doing, right? Whether it's your job, whether it's something that you're doing as a secondary income, consistency is key in order to be successful. So being an entrepreneur, consistency as far as your marketing, your branding, however you plan to communicate with your clients, like consistency is key. And knowing your brand is also an important thing as well. You have to know who you are. You can't do what everybody else is doing, and you have to find out what works for you and aligns with who you are. So that's another tip that I give people that are looking to be an entrepreneur in real estate or any other type of business. And I give this feedback to a lot of new agents as well. But so consistency, knowing your brand, networking, and using your sphere of influence. Your biggest promoter is going to be the people around you. So you have to share with people what you're doing so they can support you. And then guess what? You will get other business by them telling their friends and family or colleagues or coworkers, who you are, what you're doing, or hey, I have a friend that's a realtor, or I have a friend that's doing this. So you want to tell the people around you what you're doing for that support and that future business. And the last thing that I tell a lot of entrepreneurs is don't be afraid to fail. Um, you my father says all the time, Nothing beats a fail but a try," right? So you cannot be afraid to fail as an entrepreneur, and especially in real estate, we hit a lot of fails, or we have a lot of challenges, right? Dealing with transactions, and you're dealing with different buyers and sellers and different personalities. And sometimes things, don't always go right. But you, as an entrepreneur or even a realtor or in the real estate industry, you have to know how to make things reset things and get things back on track, and know that, yeah, I may have failed at this part, but I learned from this. Let me reset, let me change things around, let me do it differently, and you carry that forward. So those are the tips that I give a lot of entrepreneurs. So what makes real estate real life? I've gotten this question from a lot of friends or family as I've told them about this podcast. Um, I would say the one word that comes to mind when I think about real estate and making it real life is this topic or words that you hear thrown around a lot now is generational wealth, right? And why real estate is so important. It is a gateway to generational wealth. And how so? So just giving an example, imagine a first time home buyer, a young single parent who purchases a modest home in a stable neighborhood, right? Over time, as they build equity in that property, they use it to fund their child's college education, reducing the need for any student loans. So your child won't have any student debt. So years later, the home appreciates in value, and when the parent passes, or they decide to maybe buy another house, or they leave that child mortgage free. So now that child has a valuable asset that they can live in, they can rent, they can sell, and it provides them financial freedom and a head start that their parent didn't have. So beyond finances, like, a family that also gains a deeper the family gains a deeper connection to the community, stability that helps their children thrive, and a foundation of security to pass down. So when I think about generational wealth, that's just an example of real estate and how real estate meets real life. Now, also, real estate meets real life when we just talk about experiences. I have a lot of friends who have become homeowners, and when you are in a friend circle, like my inner circle, we get together and we talk about home ownership, or we talk about investment things that we're doing, whether I have friends that are buying multi units or buying rental property. What is that experience like? Or how did you go about doing it? Or what has been your success with that? What kind of profit margins are you seeing every year? These are conversations that my inner circle is having. So I wanted to bring that to this podcast. I want to bring people forward that can share their own individual experiences through real estate, and how that has opened up, other experiences. Like I said, I have several friends that are married and both individuals own real estate. How has that affected or benefited your marriage? What tax breaks does that come for married couples? So there's different topics that real estate can venture off into that aligns with real life. So we'll have those conversations on the podcast as well. So I wanna kind of give a update of what's happening in the real estate market right now. So I'll touch on what's happening in Chicago, or the Chicagoland area. So everybody knows, right now real estate is the market, low inventory, home affordability, like those are the main issues. We are still in a seller's market. So you've got home prices that are higher because the inventory is low. Sellers are still, getting multiple offers for their property because there's no inventory. I do know that I think the median home sale prices in Chicago in October was, I think, 360,000. So we have an affordability issue, right? Depending on where you're looking within the Chicagoland area. I think the average days a house sits on the market right now is averaging right under 60 days. I think it's about 58 days. We have challenges and not necessarily with market time, but challenges as far as inventory. That right now is a nationwide issue. Inventory because you've got sellers who don't want to give up those low interest rates and sell their property. So, they're sitting tight and they don't want to sell. So we are literally, as real estate agents and people in the real estate industry, I'll wholesalers or off market investors, you're cold calling and calling any type of seller that has equity in their property to open up a conversation about their interest in selling their home, because we've got to create inventory because we do have buyers out here. I know another big issue is interest rates. Interest rates have been high over the last 2 years. We just saw a drop in September, and then we just actually had another drop post election results on Thursday. I believe interest rates dropped about a quarter. So we're seeing some decline, but it's still not great enough where you have an influx of buyers. But as rates continue to go down, it will be more buyers, but we'll still have an inventory issue. So, inventory, like I said, probably is the number one issue. Next, I would say affordability because of those high interest rates. And then, it's just I think finding the right home for the right buyer probably will be like the third issue, that because the inventory is low, is finding those right properties for people that are looking. I would say buyers are relying heavily on their agents to find the right home, that haven't made it to the market yet. So when I talked about like us as realtors getting creative and reaching out to sellers who have equity, we're trying to create that inventory for our clients. And then we're getting, as far as offers, we're having to get creative with our offers. We're like often waiving contingencies like inspections or appraisals, or there we've gotten really creative over the last 2 years because we've got to make our buyer competitive. I've had buyers increase their earnest money, which, and as I say, topics or terminology in this show and as we move forward, we'll break down what those things are. But earnest money, which is good faith money towards a purchase, we've had buyers putting down $5,000, $10,000 of earnest money to make them more competitive to a seller and competitive to other buyers. And then offering flexibility to the seller. So we've had buyers get creative as to when, allowing the seller to stay longer in the house, 30 days at a discounted rate, to give an advantage to the seller so that buyer can get that property. So there's definitely been, a lot of different creative things that we've been doing to secure properties for our clients. So I think the one tip that I can say as far as what's happening in the market today is you have to talk to a real estate professional. So whether that be a realtor, whether that be a lender, whether that be a real estate attorney, talk to someone within the real estate industry. If you're looking to either buy, sell, or get into the business, talk to people within the industry about what's going on. So that's what, you'll get your information, real-time information as to what's currently happening, what people are seeing, and then get advice on how to proceed. And so my first thing is always, because I'm a realtor, so I'm always going to say talk to a realtor first or reach out to me first, and I'll give you the guidance or connect you with the right people. So, and for first time buyers, this show will do a lot of focus for first time home buyers and then first time investors, and really, walk you through the process of home buying or walk you through the process of buying an investment property. So, we I want to bring on next week. We'll actually have a credit repair person. So I'll give that information again at the end of the show. But we'll have a credit repair person because that's always a first step, right, for any type of buyer or purchaser. If you're financing a property and you're not paying cash, you've got to be able to qualify for that financing or that lending. So credit is going to be one thing. I always tell my buyers have a 620 or better credit score. So I'm going to bring an expert on to give us more tips as what things you need to be doing to be credit worthy in order to buy. It's talking to a mortgage lender. What are mortgage rates looking like based on your credit range? What does that look like in terms of a monthly mortgage payment? What type of loans are there between FHA loans, government backed loans, or conventional loans, or a 20 FHA 203K, which is kind of a renovation loan? Not kind of, it is. But what type of financing are you eligible for and what makes the most sense for you? For investors, there's hard money loans, there's private loans, there's all kind of different lending. So we'll have mortgage and lending experts on the show to give people not feedback, but tips and strategies on how to look for loans, what loans are beneficial depending on what you're trying to do. So you'll get that information as well. Another thing to have is attorneys' expertise, right? So, as far as legal issues with owning real estate, buying real estate, selling real estate. So, we'll have an attorney on the show, and you'll be able to hear, the different pitfalls or challenges that people have with, especially this is the number one, being a landlord, right? So I do have a very experienced eviction attorney who will be on the show in the next couple weeks, telling people, what challenges landlords are having evicting tenants, because that is a major issue here in Chicago, and I think it's an issue nationwide. But we'll talk more about that. And just as a landlord, what challenges or what things can I do to avoid an eviction? I know they're not always avoidable, but what things can I do to make that a slim to none possibility, right? So we'll have an attorney on the show as well. And so another, I want to kind of go into some questions, common questions that I get or that I've encountered as a realtor or even just, as a homeowner. And these are questions that come up a lot. So like, what's the biggest mistake first time home buyers make? And I always tell people not getting pre-approved before they start looking. So I always relate this example to, it's just like going shopping without knowing how much money you have in the bank, right? So if I go to Target, because I'm a Target fan, but if I go to Target and I don't know that I only have $100, but I got $200 worth of stuff in my cart, I can't afford it, right? So it's no different with buying a home. A lot of people now, because it's so easy to look for homes on your phone, with third party sites like Zillow and Redfin and homes.com, I can lay in bed and scroll and look for homes, but I haven't even talked to a realtor or a mortgage individual to find out what can I afford. So what I'm looking at, I might not be able to afford, and not I don't want to say you're wasting time, but you want to be able to shop smartly, right? So you want to be able to look at things that are realistic, that are within your price range. I tell new clients that I get all the time, they come to me and they're approved for 300,000 or 350 or 400,000, and I always ask, "Okay, you're approved for that, but what is it realistically that you wanna spend, or where do you want your monthly payment to be?" That's how I work. I want my home buyers or I want my clients to be comfortable when they get in that home, and not be what we call house poor, right? So I want people to know ahead of time, if even though you're approved for 300,000, you might not want to spend more than 2,000 a month on a mortgage. Well, I need to adjust our numbers. That's how I'm working with you as your realtor, looking for property that stays within that $2,000 a month range. So knowing, not getting pre-approved before you start and knowing what you want to spend is key. Um, a lot of first-time home buyers don't account for other costs besides a down payment and the mortgage. Other costs would include taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, and utilities. I'm working with a client now who's going through a foreclosure, and this is a young gentleman, owns a home in the south suburbs, and His home is up for foreclosure soon, and as he and I were talking, he was just kind of picking my brain on his options. But he shared with me, I bought this home and I didn't realize I needed to maintain the home, or I didn't know I needed to save money or put money aside to fix the home up. His roof, he needed a new roof. He had exterior issues to the siding. His backyard was a wreck. And so, these are things he's owned the home for, I think, less than 6 years, and just stuff that he never did. And so he's just like, nobody told me that I needed to maintain a home. And there's a lot of realtors out here. And even I want to go beyond realtors, because I think it's just a conversation that's not being had amongst our inner circles. I'm sorry, I'm gonna shameless plug a lot. But when we have a friend or a family member that owns a home, are we having those conversations with our younger generation that are in the family, or just with each other as we sit at a dinner table? Are we talking about home ownership and what it takes to maintain a home and care for a home, saving money that goes to a home. I tell people all the time, a home is no different than a car. If your car breaks down, you can't get to where you need to go. And we all need to get point A to point B. Oftentimes that is work, right? To maintain a living. So, your home is the place we shelter over your head. You have to treat that the same way. So saving money to the side, because things are going to happen. The furnace is going to go out, the air conditioner is going to go out, the roof, you're going to have a leak at some point in time. I mean, there's things that are going to happen. So being prepared for those things. And I think as realtors, we need to do a better job of home buying education post looking and closing on a home. So that is, those are probably the two biggest mistakes that I see a lot of first time home buyers make. So another question I get is, how do I know if I'm getting a good deal, right? That's the $1,000,000 question. And I get this a lot from a lot of investors. But this is where I always say your realtor is key. So a realtor can evaluate the property that you're looking at. They can evaluate the home, tell you how much it's worth, estimate the equity you would have if you bought it, and tell you things about the market and the area for future consideration. I have buyers that are looking for multi-unit buildings, and they want to know, how is this particular neighborhood, how what's the crime rate, what things are coming nearby that it might increase the property value, what things within the market or the area are happening that would make that purchase beneficial and a good investment. So that's kind of, I would say lean on your real estate professional to give you those answers. Ultimately, it is your decision, but you want to get as much information from your realtor and whoever you're working with to make that decision. So I would say, like, working with a realtor is key. Another $1,000,000 question that most realtors get is, now a good time to buy or invest, right? And I always say this is a subjective question and answer, right? It's really a subjective answer, but because it all depends on the buyer's goals and their finances. So if your goal is to own 10 rental properties within the next 5 years, then I need to sit down with you and we need to figure out an aggressive plan on how to do that, and we need to look at your financing. How are you planning to do that? And that's part of the plan as well. So it's really figuring out what your goals are. If they're short term, long term, those are things that your real estate professional can work on with you. And then financing, like I said, lending is key. You can't purchase real estate. I'm not without necessarily lending, because if you're a cash buyer, that's all great. I always say cash is king. But most times, a lot of investors believe in using other people's money. I am one of those as well. I'm like, using other people's money to purchase real estate. So financing, how do we finance your real estate goals, and coming up with a plan, and whether that be sitting with financial advisor, sitting with a lender who can put a plan together of how we can go about tackling purchasing these, whether it's one property or a multitude of properties. How do we go about doing that? So once again, this is the Inner Circle podcast on IntellectualRadio.com. We are going to take a quick break and come back, and actually we're going to take a couple of calls from callers out there. Open up the phone lines. The phone number is 708-223-8255. 8953. If you have any questions, real estate questions, please feel free to give me a call and we will take those live on the air. We will be back shortly. Okay, I wrapped up my entire thing.
You're tuned in to IntellectualRadio-Podcast.
I wait and call back live in a little
No,
bit,
no, no.
or do
Just
I
hang on.
ask my question?
Hang on. Hang on. Yeah. We're gonna once the music stops, then I'll we have to come back into the show, and then I'll come back to caller. And I'll say caller, tell me your name, and then
Okay.
ask your question.
Okay. HELOC questions. You want me to wait on HELOC?
Oh, huh? Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Can you explain how that works for people who have equity in their home, or did you
Yeah,
want me to
no,
save that for later?
absolutely. Yeah, no, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Inner Circle podcast, where real estate meets real life. Again, I'm your host, Jillian Owens, aka your homegirl, Jillian. We are in the second segment of our podcast here. The first segment, we talked about, just introducing the show. This is our very first episode, and we talked about real estate and how that intersects into real life. We gave tips to home buyers and first time investors, or first time home buyers and first time investors. We talked a little bit about the real estate market, and now we want to open up the phone lines and take questions from any callers. We do have our first caller on the line who's called into IntellectualRadio.com. So, caller, can I ask your name and your location? Where are you from?
Sure. My name is Adrienne Taylor, and I am located in the Ashburn area, right outside of Oak Lawn in Chicago. And I actually had a general question about equity lines of credit.
Okay.
Can you explain a little bit about how getting equity works as far as pulling equity out of your home if you have to wait a certain amount of time? And is that interest rate the same as someone that's purchasing a home? Does the interest rate for equity lines of credit, is it the same as individuals that actually are buying the home for the first time?
Okay, no, Adrian, thank you for calling. That was a great question, and I am familiar with the Ashburn neighborhood. It's actually one of my favorite neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about equity, right? For any listeners out there, or audience out there that doesn't know what equity is. So equity is going to be, um, it is the difference between what your home is worth and what you owe on it, right? So if your home is worth 300,000 and you owe 150,000, you've got $150,000 worth of equity in that property, right? So what can homeowners do? I know people get this hear this all the time, refinancing or tapping into their equity, or as Adrian mentioned, home equity lines of credit, being able to utilize that. Is What does that mean? So that means I can tap into that equity, that $150,000, and I can take a loan out on that 150 with a lending or mortgage institution, a bank institution. I can tap into that equity. I can either pull that cash out and use it personal, or I can put that money back into my home. Let's say I want to do renovations in my property, do a new kitchen, do new bathrooms, do exterior upgrades. If those are things that I want to do, I can use that home equity line of credit, which is almost like a credit card on the property, right? It has interest on it. Adrian asked, is that interest rate different than when you're just going to purchase a home? I would say yes. That interest rate is more in alignment, to me, in my experience, with credit card interest rates. I think most HELOCs right now might be around 12 or 13%. So it is, it's higher than your traditional mortgage loan rate, interest rate. So, but it gives you the flexibility to use the cash that is the equity, I'm sorry, the cash or equity that's in your property. So whether you have debt that you want to pay off, personal credit card debt, people tap into their home equity to pay off personal loans, or if they want to do renovations. I would say those are probably the two biggest things that you see people tap into, their equity, their home equity credit for that. So Adrian, do you have another question, or did we answer that up for you?
That was pretty good. I just had another question about that. So, with equity lines of credit, do you need a loan officer, or do you just work with your realtor?
So the first, I mean, you can, if you've got a long-standing relationship with a realtor, you can contact your realtor. They're just going to connect you with a lending institution that does home equity lines of credit. So it could be the original mortgage company that you utilize to get the mortgage on your home. It could be your local bank. You probably want to shop around for who's got good rates based on your credit and your just financial profile. You want to shop around and see who's got the best interest rate, and then there's timing. Home equity lines of credit don't take a long time to get. I would say on average, it's less than 4 weeks. So you want to utilize a lender that's going to be diligent with getting you through that process to tap into the equity because you're going to have an appraisal on that property. So if anything
Okay.
slightly fluctuates with the market, those numbers could change a little bit. So you want to connect with a mortgage individual or a lending individual to start the HELOC process. So
Okay.
Adrian, we've got another caller in, so we appreciate you
Okay.
for calling in. Thank you for your questions. Please tune in next week, and thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye. Have a good day.
Bye bye. Hi, this is the Inner Circle podcast. Who do we have? Caller, can I get your name and your location?
Sure. My name is Michelle Martin, and I'm in Oak Park.
You're in Oak Park. Thank you, Michelle, for giving us a call, and thank you for listening to us today. Michelle, what's your real estate, real life question?
Okay, so I am looking at potentially becoming a first time home buyer. And I guess I have major concerns regarding these interest rates. We know they're all currently up from what they've been in the past. And you hear people saying, oh, just hold out and just wait. They're going to go down. And I'm just wondering, well, like, what are your thoughts? And I know I could get it. I could buy this home and I could potentially refinance in the future. But I guess I'm looking for what is really the best way to go about this.
So, Michelle, my answer to that always is marry the house, date the rate, right? If you are in love with that property, why would you let it walk away from you because of an interest rate that's going to fluctuate over time, right? So, and you hit the nail on the head. Refinance, that's always an option. As you see rates go down, you see people running to their lender to refinance to get the lower rate, right? So, if you're in love with the house, I wouldn't say don't let interest rates scare you away from that property.
Okay. All right. That was definitely a major concern that's been on my mind, but that makes sense. I like it. Date the rate. Okay.
Yeah, date the rate. Interest rates change. You see interest rates change on credit cards, on various things. Interest rates within the mortgage industry will change as well. That, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, they are starting to come down. I can't predict the future, but we do. I do believe that they will come. They will start to come down even more. So you'll have people that are refinancing out of those 7-8% interest rates to get back down to a 6 or a 5.
Okay. And then a last question here, since I have you. I'm very picky about what I want. And so I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on like new build versus like finding a property that I can renovate and make my own?
So my general answer to that typically is, what's your future like? What's the plan for that property? Like long-term goals. Is this your forever home, or is this a starter home? So, and it really is personal choice. It's kind of subjective as to new construction. Everybody likes new, right? So new construction, it gives you that affordability a lot of times to go in and make the selections, and even with some builders, the changes to the build that you want to do, right? But all you get the same type of strategy with a resale as well, something that needs to be renovated. You get to make it your own. Now you do have to demo that property or take it down to the bones to redo it versus new construction where they're just putting it up. But a lot of times it really just depends on, are you staying in this property long term, or is this something that you are considering reselling? A lot of times new construction might be a little easier to resell because there's always people going to be in the new construction market. So it really just depends on your long term goals, and then also what do the finances look like to do either one, to build or to buy new construction, or to just renovate a current home or a home that you buy for inexpensively. and that you can put 100,000, I'm just throwing out a number, to renovate it. So which one financially is better for you? So those are things,
Okay.
once again, I'm always going to defer back to talking to a real estate professional who can sit down with you and go over the pros and cons for you, as to what your goals are. And you can kind of narrow those down and figure out which option is the best for you.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, for calling into the Inner Circle Real Estate podcast. We appreciate the calls. I think we're going to close the phone line now. So Michelle, thank you so much. I hope you tune in next week, next Saturday
Okay.
at 11 a.m.
Will do. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. So I want to thank both Adrian and Michelle. I believe those were both of our callers' names. I think they were both from Chicagoland area, Oak Park, and then the South Side of Chicago. So I want to thank them both for calling in. I get questions like that all the time. A lot of times these questions are things that people hear other people talking about, or they get mailers about, and you're just not quite sure what to do about these things, right? So having a real estate professional that you can pick up the phone or shoot a text to and ask, hey, I'm thinking about a home equity line of credit. How do I go about that? Or do you know somebody that I can talk to about that? I get those type of questions all the time. I keep a referral list for um, electricians, plumbers, roofers. I have tree cutters. I have concrete people. Like, I keep a referral list because homeowners are always going to need someone to do work, right? So as a real estate professional, I just always want to make sure I'm referring my clients or potential clients to the right individuals within our industry who could help, and that even includes the right mortgage individuals. So thank you both for those questions. They were both great questions. So we're gonna wrap up our podcast here. Oh, I think we've got maybe one more question we might be able to squeeze in. So hang tight 1 second. Yeah, we'll take it. Hi, this is Jillian on the Inner Circle podcast. Can you tell me your name and what's your question and your location? I'm
Okay.
sorry.
My, my name is Michelle. I'm calling from Richton Park, Illinois.
Okay.
And I'd like to know, I know you talked about earlier getting your credit score together, but what are some other things that a first time home buyer can do to kind of prepare before I talk to a realtor?
So, hi, Michelle from Richmond Park. I appreciate you calling in. South suburbs in the building. So yeah, Michelle's question is what are some things besides credit repair or in addition to credit that you can do to be ready to buy? Savings is another is probably the second biggest thing that I would say. Start saving. Start monitoring your budgeting, what you're spending your money on, reallocating funds that you're spending to savings, and start preparing for the expense of owning a home, right? So that would be my second biggest thing. Um, on top of budgeting, credit, talking to different individuals, even just getting a team of people. I talked about this in the beginning, about home ownership, right? So whether you're talking to family members or friends about owning a home, that's how a lot of people get started to even think about home ownership is, oh, my so and so owned a home or bought a home, how do I go about doing that? So you're talking to individuals about their process. But that's why I'm
That's a good
always,
idea.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was part of the purpose of this podcast, is to have these conversations that I know are being had behind closed doors. Let's have them in front of other people. We're having them in our inner circles, right? But we're not necessarily having them amongst the larger population where we know these tips and experiences can help other people. So that's a good question, Michelle. But the biggest thing I would say is besides credit repair is budgeting, is saving your money and then figuring out where your money is going and how you can rearrange things to start saving to put money up towards buying a home.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle from Richmond Park, for calling in. Okay. So I want to thank you all to all of my listeners for tuning in today. Again, we are live on intellectualradio.com. You can watch live every Saturday. The podcast will be live Saturdays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. You'll be able to watch on IntellectualRadio.com, the website, or the YouTube channel. Then you'll also be able to see the podcast streamed on my Facebook page, as well as some other platforms. We'll kind of promote those next week. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in for my very first episode. I'm looking forward to next week's episode where I like I mentioned before, we'll have credit repair. So that should be a really, really good conversation with a ton of questions. So I'll put the number out there ahead of time so callers can call in with certain credit questions. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will talk to you again next Saturday.